senior member of the Syrian National Council. Louay, thank you very much for making it on the show. Now, Ahrar al-Sham group say that they are independent. They're not backed by Al-Qaeda. They claim they're not backed by any Western governments at all. What do you make of them?
What we know about them is exactly that. They have been committed to the struggle against the regime in Syria. They have no loyalty beyond the Syrian borders. And they have, in fact, denounced the alliance between Jabhat al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda. So that's positive. Definitely, they have a particular views about Syrian government and the future of Syria that we don't share within the Itilaf. But we think they have not been a negative, they have been a positive force in fighting the aggression of the regime and defending their territories, their villages and their towns.
You make a very important point there. They are fighting for their territories, their villages and their towns. And that's the whole problem with this civil war, isn't it? I mean, this no longer is a civil war. SNC itself is made up of several rebel factions, and they're all fighting for their own territories, their own villages.
That's true. I mean, this is part of the problem that we are currently trying to see how we can overcome. The political office of the coalition has met in the last 2 days, and this has been high on our agenda. So we would like to transcend this phase, but that would require more organization, central command, and that require really a good support. Unfortunately, the international community and even to some extent some of our regional supporters are wavering, and that is not helpful.
Well, that brings me to my other point now, which Ahrar al-Sham group did bring up as well. They say they're not backed by any powers at all, foreign or where else. Now, the SNC, we know, is backed by Western groups, in particular Western governments, foreign powers, regional powers as well. What deals are you making with these powers for their support? I mean, what Syrian assets have you promised them for their support?
Well, there has been no promise given of Syrian assets. Our engagement has been about supporting the push toward democracy and freedom, and that would be better for everybody, including to the region.
But surely these supporters would want something in return for their financial backing, wouldn't they? What are you willing to offer them?
This discussion has not taken place. They have not asked for any particular thing. As you know, Syria requires now a lot of rebuilding. And definitely doesn't have a lot of oil or anything that can be promised. But what can Syria promise is to transcend or transform the region to become more peaceful, more democratic, more engaging globally in commerce, and the Syrian people are known to be resourceful. So I think that should be seen as a positive thing. The alternative would be more chaos, probably Al-Qaeda becoming entrenched in Syria, and I think that's not a good picture.
Louay, now you mentioned a little earlier, and you agreed with me too, that there are many players on the ground. The SNC itself is very fractured in their need and aim to move forward. There are many players in this particular conflict. There are many so-called commanders on the ground as well. Now, the reality is that President Assad's forces have been successful because of the disunity in the so-called opposition, isn't it?
Well, I think they have been able to prolong the life of the regime through outside support, mainly the support from Iran. Every month, at least $500 million is sent to Syria, and forces are sent from Iraq, from Iran, and from Lebanon. But these forces cannot defeat the will of the Syrian people. Syrian people are very patient, resourceful. They have been patient with the Assad regime. They gave it all the time it needs to make reform, but now it will be patient with that regime until it's crushed. And unless this regime starts a political process toward transition, unfortunately, there would be a continuous struggle with that regime.
All right, Louay, thank you very much for speaking with us. Louay Safi, the senior member of the Syrian National Council.